There should be a bing. There's a bing. Apparently only I hear the bing. Sometimes I wonder if it's only in my head. But there we go. So it's local support. It is some point in January, and this is the weekly kickoff. So the key thing to do, I think, with the kickoff is to try and review the board. And so we have a board for the local support project. Let's just jump to here. We'll get our little infinite regress. And in fact, yes, we have there. Let's put this on a different window and hide this. So this is the Pivotal Tracker board for local support. I know I was explaining earlier to Sam about this. This is potentially news to Rob and Amy, but so I'll just do a very brief intro there. As you know, AgroVentures itself supports a number of different projects. Local support is one of those projects. It's one of the most active projects. It's one of the longest running. It's kind of the granddaddy of the projects within local support. And local support, the software, is a Rails project that supports, the main instance of it is being used for this Harrow community network, which is a network of nonprofits in Northwest London. So that's, I think actually maybe I mentioned that during the hiring week, so I don't have to go into that in too much detail. But so in principle, any project, in AgroVentures has, a set of data associated with it. It links through. You've got the link to it on the GitHub of the Pivotal Tracker. And so for the kickoff meeting, we would kind of do a review of the board and what's going on. So we've got here. So looking at this, there's a little chore here about putting some Rails validations on the organizations. And this is something that David Bebb and Mo Sadoun, they're in your cohort, is that right, Zivko?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so they were sort of talking about doing, and then Mo went off around the world, and I think David's actually got some paid work now. So that's potentially quite a nice starting chore. It's just about, adding in some like validations so that when people are creating organizations, we've got sort of new organization, when you're to like validate some of the different fields. So, for people with sort of a basic familiarity with Rails, it's a nice entry point. Mo's just got back. This is the thing. I guess we'll leave it for them this week if they want to get into that. If they don't, then I will be tempted to sort of unassign them from that and kind of throw it back into the backlog there. I guess I'll just ask Amy and Rob and Sam, does the idea of this, we've got kind of a reverse Kanban board going on here with Pivotal Tracker. Is the approximate idea of how this is used, does it need some explanation, or are you reasonably happy with it?
It's pretty clear to me, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Amy, you can just thumbs up if you're okay with that. And yeah, and obviously, if you don't want to ask in the meeting, you can always, Slack me afterwards and sort of for questions and this and that. So yeah, so we've got our current things. This is the stuff in progress. We've got this bug fix that's delivered. That was by Alexander, one of our. He's in the Far East. I kind of loathe to click accept there. I just need to do some things on the production server to check that it really is working, that the fix is really in place. But so we can skip on over that. We've got.
I have a quick question about it.
Go on, Zivko. Yeah.
If you could just explain when we should be clicking finish, accept, and etc. on the current one.
Sure, absolutely.
Watching you going with the client through all the ones before clicking accept.
Yes,
so
yes.
I'm still confused when to click finish and accept. And if
sure. Yeah. So basically, I mean, and this is part of the agile process. There's supposed to be a kind of fairly rigorous thing that basically we would never click accept without the explicit permission of the client. Basically, that we as individuals, we as developers or project managers or whatever we are on the project, we can't judge ultimately whether the client needs are actually met. And so, this was a bug that I think it may have been actually I think it was the client who encountered it. And so, even though I'm fairly sure that we've got a fix out of this, until I kind of like show the client that this functionality is definitely working, I don't want this accept button to be clicked. And the way that I tend to do it in the meetings with the client is, although in some ways, if you had a more technically savvy client, not that our client isn't that technically savvy, but she's not a programmer, the client could be clicking the accept buttons themselves, but basically the 99% towards that is basically when I'm in discussion with the client in the client meeting, which is regularly on Thursdays, and you can see videos of, and you can always you can attend remotely if you're interested. Then I will sort of ask the client, "Are you happy with this now?" And she can say yes or no, and I'll click accept or reject of a delivered story in that context. Yeah, does that make sense, Zivko?
Yeah, yeah. And now that deliver
and finish. Yeah. So I mean, so the sequence that we have, if we have a look at this one here, so we've got one of your things that you're working on here, Zivko. So this is in the thing that, so ideally, I'll just go through all the sequence of this. This is the sequence of states that the individual elements that the individuals go through. So they all, when you create them, they exist initially in the unstarted phase, and then when you click start, like we can see we've got over here, when you click start, they will move from the backlog or icebox into the current column, and you'll get assigned as an owner. So if you're right, yes, I'm definitely working on something, you click start, and then you get associated with the story. So that's something. Ziv, I mean, I think you're getting quite good at it actually now, Zivko. You're pretty solid on hitting the started thing. Now with the finished, again, you as a person who's working on a story, you also, if you've put the pull request in, yeah, and you're like, yeah, I've done the pull request, and you could quite happily click finish there, although it's reasonable to hold off until, because the pull request might, you might get a series of revisions, you might update the pull request, but certainly once your pull request gets merged, you can totally hit finished. Yeah. Yeah, because that's like, okay, the project manager, in this case me, if I've merged your pull request, that's basically me saying, yeah, you're done with that task. I mean, we may have spun out other things to do and created other tickets, but the fundamental element there is done. So if I don't click the finished for you, please go ahead and click finished with the whenever you get your pull request merged. Now, delivered, the way that I interpret delivered is that it means that the code change is actually available on the production server for the client to use. Yeah. So just having merged something doesn't mean that it's actually available for the client to use. We haven't delivered the product to the client, and we have like the develop server and the staging server and the production server. So basically, I mean, I'd be happy if any of you are particularly interested in the DevOps and that flow. We could get you involved in that, and you could be clicking the delivered. I sort of assume that you probably all prefer, to be involved more in the coding side. But so from your point of view, you don't really need to worry about the deliver or the accept. You can kind of leave that to the project manager, but obviously useful to know how it all works. I think that's kind of a complete overview of everything. Any questions there?
No, it makes sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course sometimes we do, if we actually deploy it into production and it just doesn't work, because sometimes that does happen, and the client doesn't like it or whatever, we might click reject, and then there's a restart process and so on, but we don't have to worry about that right now. But yeah, this functionality is sort of standard to all of the Pivotal Tracker things. Different projects, exactly how they interpret when the different buttons clicked may vary from project to project, but what I've just described is how we do it in local support.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, this one I'll worry about that. I'll note this. We've got an ongoing thing here. I was just talking to Sam in an earlier session about this. Is we've got like there's a kind of noise that we've got. So I've got here examples of other things. If I run the entire test suite from, let's go back to really, like for example, we've got our feature tests are in Cucumber rather than RSpec. But if I run the Cucumber tests for the whole project, we've got quite a lot of noise coming from these are the tests. They're kind of running in a headless browser, so they're running bits of JavaScript. So you can start to see there's kind of like some Google geocoding stuff going on. There are bits and pieces. Basically, the tests are not running in the kind of complete sandbox that we would like. So there's quite a complex effort going on to make sure that the test framework, the acceptance tests in particular, are properly sandboxed and that we're not hitting any third-party services. So what's happening there is actually, as we run acceptance tests, which are running in a headless browser, so it's like it's hidden, you can't see it, the system is going through and checking that all of these different operations involving the map work, right? And what's happening as a side effect is that the acceptance tests are actually hitting the Google Maps API from the headless browser. It's kind of a complex thing that's going on. I think we have got to a potential solution for it, but so we've got, in particular, it's Zamago and Marcelo, who are two. I don't know where Zamago actually is. He's somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think, and Marcelo, who's in California. That's two of our other non-makers developers. So they're working on that. It's kind of in progress. Hopefully, what we're going to end up with is a much cleaner test suite running that's not hitting any third-party services there. So if you want to know more about that, you've got the any of these tickets. There's more discussion and description and so on. Certainly don't feel like you have to understand all of them. If something piques your interest, you can kind of like find out more about that one. But so yeah, so Alexander, he's working on next is just adjusting some of the terminology in some of the error messages that we display to the user. This is your one here, Zivko. Yeah. So this one here, this is all done, right? I merged this pull request in.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yes. And so that was my comment there before of just, I think it, I ended up pushing the finished button for you, and since I'm the one doing the merging of the pull request, that's I have probably the weight is on me. That probably not something that you should have to remember, but you can always do that if you're kind of like, oh, Sam merged it, but he forgot to.
Okay.
You can always click finish. Yeah, but so that one's done. And so here's another one that you're working on. Oh, so this was this one that we've got, Zivko. This is this hanging. Yeah, I was kind of. If we go, do I go back to here?
I couldn't replicate one, so I'm not sure what could we do.
Yeah, I mean, this is this. I'm getting it like here, and I'm getting it in production. I think I've basically got a thing that I need to do for you, which is I need to try and replicate this locally in a test thing. So this is just like a little annoying slash that's appearing in one screen that is like everybody can see that there. That's like a little annoying UI thing. It feels like there must be like a trailing slash hanging over somewhere in one of the templates. But it's a trivial thing. I've seen it a few times. I wonder if it's only appearing on a production server. Anyway, but yeah, I think the action item there is basically I will do that maybe after this meeting, Zivko, and I'll post the results.
Yeah. And I also tried on Jana's machine when we were Friday, and I couldn't see it there.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, interesting. So then we've got, this is another one that you've got started. This is your one, Zivko. We were talking about this earlier today. Yes. So yeah, how's this one going?
I've added a screenshot. If you can have a look what I've done in there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here. Yes. Yes.
So I'm not sure whether that's
Yeah, I think that's definitely an improvement over what we had before. This one for the other guys. So this is one of the things that the admin can do within the Harrow Community Network is we have some organizations that don't have users associated with them. They're organizations that we kind of pulled from the government charity database, or that Harrow. So Voluntary Action Harrow is the umbrella organization in Northwest London who are our client for this, and so they also have people that they've met through their work supporting voluntary organizations, and they've added them to the system, and they're now okay. So we'd like to let you know we're recording your data. We can give you the ability to control and edit your data within the directory, and so we have these admin pages where the admin user can come in and say, okay, yeah, I'd like to send an invite to these people, and they will get to allow them to control their data within the system. Now, one of the things that we had in there that was a bit opaque was we had this email that gets sent out as a result of doing that invite, but you couldn't necessarily see what it was, and so the admin was like, maybe, oh, do we need to update that email, or what do we need to do? And so the first thing, this is something that Zivko did, was he added this is the contents of the email that you will send if you do these invites. And sort of feedback from me was like, it's not I don't know. I think it might be easy for the user to miss that this is like an email template here. Ultimately, we'd like to give the client the ability to edit this this template, but we're starting with the simpler feature of just displaying the email that they're going to see. And so there, yeah, this is the Zivco's restyled it to put it in a little well to give it a different background. I think that's definitely a step in the right direction, Zivco. I think it's clearer that that's an example email. I mean, we could carry on tweaking it, like making the background like a yellow vellum color, and making the script and the font cursive and things, so it's like, oh yes, I shall send this scroll to my. Yeah, I think that's definitely an improvement. Feel free to keep tweaking it if you fancy, or not. I think that's definitely an improvement over what we have.
Well, I was thinking, should I make a pull request, and depending on what the client says on Thursday, we can change it to her preferences.
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. That sounds great. Yeah.
Because I like the simplicity, just white background.
Yeah. Absolutely. Simple first. I think simple first is definitely the way to go. Yeah, sounds good. What I also noticed, and that I came up is, so these actually, is it both these two features here, this one and this one, we created them in the client meeting last week, and I don't remember assigning points to the story.
Yes, I remember what happened. So if you have a look at, I wanted to press the start button, but couldn't find it. And if you have a look at the backlog, there is one that doesn't have a start button.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Yes.
And I was just clicking and clicking until the start button appeared. And it looks like if you minimize it, these were the points you assign. So that, I haven't realized that's points to assign.
Yes. And so you assign some points. Now, this brings up a very interesting feature of another aspect of how we use Pivotal Tracker. And so we've talked all through the different stages that the individual stories and chores and bugs. And that's another thing that Amy and Rob and Sam may be interested in, is what's the difference between those things. But and we'll get into that here now, is that when we create a new story, we have this option to turn it into a feature, a bug, a chore, or a release. We won't worry about releases for the moment. That's a whole separate thing. We don't use them so much in this particular project. But a feature, at least the way we use it in local support, is intended to represent new functionality that the client has requested. Yeah. So if it's just like, oh, I want to refactor something, like I'm not really happy with the code quality, and it doesn't, relate to the client, then I'm not going to call it a feature. I'm going to call that a chore. Yeah, that's just something I need to get done. If there's a bit of DevOps that I need to do, that's like I need to do something on the production server, it's not, the client's not saying to me, go and do that little thing there. They're just stuff that's got to be done to ultimately deliver the features, what the clients request. If there's something wrong with the site, if there's like something that should be working and it's broken, then that ends up being a bug. And depending upon whether something is a chore or a bug or a feature, it has a number of impacts, a couple of impacts. Basically, the life cycle of chores is simpler. They just have start and finish. They don't have this, deliver, accept, reject. The features and the bugs, they do have that full life cycle that we looked at already. And finally, only features have these points. And so we talk about pointing the stories. Now, have you encountered this idea of pointing stories in Agile? Does anybody want to take Rob hasn't, but maybe Sam has. Do anybody want to take a go at how would you, for those of you who have encountered this concept, how would you describe the process of pointing stories? Why do we do that?
To decide the complexity of the feature?
Indeed we do. Indeed we do. That's right.
Yeah,
Go on, Sam.
but
Oh, I think you've accidentally you've unmuted and then muted yourself again. It's I think you need a light touch on that.
But also to evaluate the weight of a feature, whether it's more important or less important, more urgent, less urgent.
Well, that could be in some projects. I would say generally, when we're, at least the way we do it with the board here, is that the importance of the features kind of basically the further things, if things are further up on the top and the left, like so things at the top of the current list are kind of the more important. I guess if I'm following that rule, I should move this down to the bottom. That's less important. This one actually becomes there. But basically, usually the importance tends to be reflected, I think, by the position in the board rather than the number of points. I think it's in my experience, and certainly the way we use it here, is more, as Zivko says, it's more about giving a guide to how complex the story is. So we've got this one here. This is Zivko and Jana are working on, and this involves basically a third-party service called Do It that does volunteering for the whole UK, and using their API to pull volunteer opportunities into our site. And that's quite a complex thing, and I'm sure Zivko will tell you about the parties that we're having with that. That's a 3-point story, and that's, you know, to reflect the fact that we think it will take a while, and it's partly to say, you know, if you've got half an hour, probably don't try and knock off this entire story. Whereas if we've got something that's kind of like a one-pointer, or you know, that's kind of like, this should be relatively simple. It's basically, you know, to try and say about the relative complexity, the difficulty of doing a particular feature. There are also other things related to velocity and project planning and so on, but I won't get into those now. If you're interested, we can talk more about those separately. But so one of the things with the features is you can't start a feature until it's been given some points. And so now what you did there, Zivko, was, I mean, the reasonable thing to get that done is a bit of a hack. What we should be doing, ideally, is rather than as an individual setting the points, is we should be setting the points as a group. So kind of in the kickoff meeting, that would be the kind of thing we would do now, or possibly in the stand-ups, is, you know, or even just doing it in Slack, is just taking a moment to kind of have a little vote on what we think the complexities of the different stories are. Now, in this case, with this one here, this add email preview, you've already done it, and I think, you know, so it was a 1 point. You know, looking back on it, was it more complex than you expected? You're muted at the moment, by the way. You're talking, but we can't hear you because you're muted, or at least maybe it's just me. Anyway, Zivko's having a great time there, laughing away, all by himself. Sorry, what were you saying, Zivko? Yes, this one.
I think this could have been even a 0 because I've done a previous one.
Yes, and it was just
replicated.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, and we could almost put it as a chore, but it was a request from the client, so I think that's fine. Now with this one here, improving the UI, again, you've kind of gone ahead and done this, and would you say it's worth the 2 points? It was pretty easy, right?
It could be either 0 or 1.
Yeah, let's just revise that back down to 1. Okay, there we go. And I think we've moved through. This is the main thing. This is I've got there's a chore here. This is I did a little session earlier on, and Samuel Overlook joined me for that. I'm doing some refactoring of some of the controller logic, but that's kind of, yeah, I think we've pretty much covered the things going on in the current thing. I guess I'm not so strict about ordering these in terms of importance to the client. Where I am stricter is each week with the client meeting, I go through the backlog and I try and make sure that the things that are most important to the client are towards the top of the backlog, if that makes sense. But so what we could do now, and we should wrap up within about 5 minutes or so. But what we could just do is do the process together of how we assign points to a story. So we've got, this was a bug that we kind of came up with last day, but there's no points for that. So I mean, this was something. There's kind of, so Zivko had been in collaboration with us. You know, we've been working on improving the terminology for what the different things that the admin could do were called, and so on. And there's quite a complex flow of different things of like inviting users and sometimes re-inviting them and then approving them and this, that, and the other. So there's a kind of a general bug there about, is the terminology all correct? This is the kind of thing, if you're really interested in the user experience side of things, I'd be happy to talk more about this with anybody who wanted to get into that. But so we've got we've got one here. Okay, so this is, yeah. So we've got enough. It's kind of the two that we have there from you, Zivko. They would be nice ones to vote on, but we can still. This is a bit of a silly story, but just for the purpose of seeing how we do the voting, yeah. Then we'll use this. So what we would do generally in a kickoff meeting is, if there are any, particularly in the backlog, if there are any stories with unassigned points, and we could even go into the icebox, but we won't go there today. Then in terms of making it so that we can as a team start work on them, we need to point them up. So this one is related to rearranging Google subpage results. So we had an outstanding kind of chore/feature request from the client that when we search for Harrow Community Network, that we should get these little sub pages here. And so you're familiar with this. You get certain sort of sites. Now, for a long time, we weren't. For a long time, like the Harrow Community Network, when you search for Harrow Community Network, it was only like number 4 or number 5 in the search engine thing, and in Google. And so that was kind of like it's a search engine optimization. So we went through a process of like adding certain tags to. I think if I can just show you. So this is I'm using RubyMine here, which you can get a free license for, by the way, if you're involved in Agile Ventures. It's a sort of a ID that's specific for Ruby and Rails projects. It's got a lot of nice features that I can show you. Obviously, happy to please carry on using the editor that you feel most comfortable with. But if we go to the where is it? On the views, and we go to the layouts, and we go to the header. Yeah. So is that the right place? I think header. I find the right thing. No, I want header. Yeah, well, I thought we added. Did we not put it in there? Let's check the layouts. That would be find in path, meta. We've got something. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's in the application layout. There we go. Yeah. So there was a process of us adding. I don't know how well you can see that, but sort of tweaking, the meta tags associated with the HTML. I don't know if any of you are familiar with those, to try and get Google to process our site in a certain way, and it certainly wasn't working for a long time. And it's a bit magic, and I don't pretend to be an expert in this, and I don't know actually if things have worked as a consequence of doing this. We added all those things in. There's also we have like a site. We've got like a sitemap XML, and that's where has that ended up? That's going to be like in public. Sitemap XML, that's it here. Yeah, this is it. So this is the thing. People were assuring me that having this kind of sitemap, which sort of tries to specify to Google which are the key locations in your site, is the way to get Google to process your site and have these like sub pages. But we put this in like, oh good God, like I don't know, like 3 months ago. But it was only like the other week that Google started pulling these things in, and it's not following what we've told it to do here at all. It's just making its own mind up about these other things based on. I mean, Google knows best. We all work for Google, basically. We're all sort of like little click bunnies working around, hamsters working for Google. But so what the client, I think, would love to see is, these, these main things like the about, contacts, the usual suspects appearing in our subpages rather than like some of the random organizations that happen to be associated with us. So that came up in the client meeting last Thursday. I'm trying to go back to that. Here it is. There you go. So I popped that in there as a feature. And I was taking notes as the client told us, that she'd like to remove the Harrow Trust subpage and get the volunteering page in there and so on. So the first thing for me to check is the feature request from the client clear to everybody? What the client wants, is it clear? Yeah, and you can thumb up. And Amy's, yeah, and it's not. We don't have to have complete clarity. Is it what's ambiguous to you, if anything, Amy? And you're muted at the moment, Amy. And
I think what's ambiguous is it seems like there's a strategy of how we could achieve this.
Yes.
But at the same time, it seems like there's another layer of what actually shows up in the Google search.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think the intent is very clear. But
okay, great.
Wise.
Yes, no, I think your analysis is correct. I think probably we can all understand the intent, but you're absolutely right. We have a certain amount of control over what our site, is and what is exposed on the network. What Google does with that information and how it then decides to process its results is very ambiguous. And I think this is the kind of thing that's maybe there is some simple tweak that would give the client what they want, but maybe there isn't, or maybe there's a simple tweak and we won't know if it's given the client what they want for another month or what have you. So it's kind of, that's why I was sort of, when we went to it, I was saying it's a bit of an icky story to be pointing up. But just for the process, for the sake of having a story that needs pointing, I thought we would go through it. But given if you're all happy with understanding the intent, what we could do now is move to a process of voting on it. So there's this idea. Actually, we can have 0-point stories. There you go. I mean, if you feel strongly about them, Zivko, and you value your time so little, you could switch some of your other ones to 0 points. But yeah, I guess if it's completely trivial, we can give it 0 points. But there's this idea of 1, 2, or 3 points. It's what we can do. So the stages are: 1, everybody get clear on what the story is. Then we kind of take a simultaneous vote on how many points we think it's going to be. And then we have if there's disagreement, we have a little discussion afterwards. And the whole point of this kind of like group voting process is to try and expose the different assumptions that we're making. And it's not about getting it right or wrong. And ultimately, the number that we settle on is not that important. What's more important is just that, if I'm happy to think that it's a 3 and that, Amy thinks it's a 1 and Zipper thinks it's a 2 or whatever, we want to expose that so that we don't get tripped up by that down the line. Does that make sense? Yeah. So sometimes I do this in Slack, but you're not necessarily all in the local support Slack. But what I'll do is now I'll just say, has everybody got access to this little chat environment that Google provides? Just type hello in the group chat just to make sure that you've got so Zivko's chat enabled. If you're having trouble finding the chat, there is if you mouse over, Amy's got it. There's like a series of icons that pops up on the left-hand side when you mouse over the Hangout, and then there's a blue one at the top, stands for chat. Yeah, Samuel's in there. Rob, are you having? Yeah, there we go. All right, so we're all in there. So what I'll usually do is we'll start off there. So what we should do is, so again, it doesn't really matter what you choose. It's just for an example. So if you think about, based on the discussion we've had so far, do we think this is like sort of a relatively trivial story or a terribly complex story? My rule of thumb usually is if it's just a change to the view, then it's kind of 1 point. If it's going to involve some sort of database change or maybe a new gem, then maybe 2 points. If it's going to involve like a big database change and 2 different gems and a third-party service, then it's going to be like a 3-point story. But so if we all think about how many points we think this might be, and then what we do is we type that number into the chat, but we don't hit return. So get your number ready. So sort of typed into the little edit box, but don't press return. And then I'm going to do a countdown. So we can all do this simultaneously. It's live voting, just like being on Next Factor. And so we're going to do 3, 2, 1, and then I will all press return together. Yeah? Got that? Okay, so 3, 2, 1, go! Ah, there we go. And Zipko's got it's got a smiley face in there as well. It's like, whoa, whoa. So interesting there. We've got a range of different things there, I guess. And so often what we'll do is if there's somebody who's like out by themselves, we'll pick on them. So Rob, you're thinking it's a 0, but that's fine. But what is it about this story that makes you think it being a 0? You sort of think it's going to be kind of a trivial amount of effort.
I just did a quick Google to see how you could affect the site links that it shows, and it seems like it's all automated at the moment, so there's not much you can do.
Right.
You can demote certain pages on your website apparently, which sounds like it'd be pretty quick to do. But then I don't know how much of an impact that would have. It'd probably take a while. So I think on the basis that there's not much you probably could do.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and I think if I just go back to I think it's like there's things that you can do with the sitemap and the meta tags and so on that would make this work. I agree with you. It would not be a complex change in terms of like from a programming side. The thing that would make me say that this is a more complex thing is the time delay. So I think we would need to make those changes. We need to push them out in production. We would need to wait for a week to see if that had any effect on them, or maybe a month, and then we kind of have to come back to it. And so this is the thing, is that we wouldn't be able to kind of click accept for quite a long time. And so the reason I gave it a 2 is kind of just that it would kind of have to hang around for a long time. And so it ends up, we might have to try a sequence of different tweaks over different time, and it just makes it a bit, messy and finicky. And so particularly for someone who wasn't confident with, the aspects of these things, I would maybe, I'm aware that if we put a 0 or a 1 on one of the things, then someone who's relatively new might think, oh yes, I'll start with that one. And I kind of my leaning towards a 2 is kind of just to kind of I would love people who are coming into the project afresh to be starting on kind of 1 pointers that are clear wins, like the validations, sure, where you're just like adding a few validations to some Rails things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Samuel and Amy both went for 1. Zivko was kind of on a 2.5. Sam and Amy and Zivko, and any we're all kind of, all of us, we're sort of all over the place. Any thoughts on anybody wanted to revise their vote? Anybody feel strongly about one value or another?
Well, I was thinking even to say 3 because from my experience, first looking at doing the threat API, it kind of looks simple. That will hit the API, it will return an information, we will display it. But then when first we discovered I have to understand how the code works. I want to what I need to fix. Then there is a testing thing as well. I didn't know Cucumber, so the first time I worked on it, just to write 2 simple lines took me 3 hours, and on reflection, it should usually take 3 minutes. So building this all up, not knowing Cucumber, understanding the code base, and then how to play it for a person freshly joining, it could be even a 3.
Yes, no, point totally taken. Yes, the Cucumber used to be part of the Makers Academy syllabus. It's not anymore. Yeah, it's. I mean, I think my sense is that we probably wouldn't necessarily even require Cucumber tests for making. We're making these very simple changes to the view, and so that leans me towards a 2. But there's always the risk that. And this is the data, as I think you've all discovered in your time at Makers Academy. Lots of things that you think are going to be really simple blow up in your face and become really complex. Yes, absolutely. I guess I'm going to move, just because I can see time marching on, I'm going to move to suggest that we go for 2 points with this one, just to kind of like split the difference. And if anybody's desperately unhappy with that, you could raise a hand now. But I think the key thing here for this thing is that I wanted to show you the process of voting and the process of discussing. So you can sort of see how, as a team, we might, with any arbitrary, request that comes in from the client, we would point that up. And having pointed that up, what that means is we now have, things in the backlog that people can get started on if they want to. Usually the chores generally are sort of simpler. But getting started on things often is the kind of thing, rather than feeling that you have to make that decision independently, is for any of these things, like the number of points or the description is a guideline. Just come into a stand-up, ask on Slack, or a kickoff meeting, and say, oh, I'd like to work on this, and then that's the way to get started on something. So we've reviewed the board. Any questions on any of that? Basically, in terms of the kickoff, I mean, my ongoing plan is to carry on with this refactoring the controller services that I started looking at with Sam earlier on. Zivko, it seems like you've got a couple of things in play, and you're going to be working with Yana on the do it volunteer items things. It's probably early days for Sam and Rob and Amy whether they even want to get involved in this project. So I think we've probably done as much as we need in terms of the kickoff meeting. I think Zivko, you and I are coordinated. Are we? I mean, I think I'm happy. Are you happy, Zivko?
Yeah, I'm happy. I just need to be leaving soon.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking at the time. Yeah, so I think we'll wrap up there. I'm hoping maybe that we might do a retro on Friday. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, I mean, for whichever other stand-ups I see you during the week, or I'm sure we'll coordinate. Let's try if we can on the Friday, 3:45. Check up then and do a little look back at the week and how it went and so on. Yeah, does that sound good? But so yeah, if we're good and you need to get on, jump off and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Zivko.
Okay.
And then, nice one. Thanks, Zivko. Really appreciate all your work today. Excellent stuff. Lovely. I love the way that you're slicing things small, keeping them simple. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Well, I'm learning from you because when I do a retro, I've started big. And you're the one pointing me. No, do small, do small.
I love it. Yeah, go on.
It's all thanks to you. So.
Well, I'm just the as I've often said, I'm the piece of grit that the oyster forms around. So it's all good. Anyway, have fun with you got that mobile programming thing. So have fun with that this evening. Excellent. And then just so I mean, Sam and Rob and Amy. Yeah, we're kind of done with the kickoff there. If you were interested in getting set up with local support, I'd be happy to help you do that. Or if you just have questions about this or a question about what other products there are, anything at all really, I've probably got about another 5 or 10 minutes or so that I can answer your questions or give you local support.
Yes, maybe just one question. If I want to get involved, how do I just come to you to get assigned some tasks?
Yeah. Well, yes, in principle. I mean, if you want to get involved specifically with the local support projects, then we can look together. You're more than welcome to just look through the board of the local support and sort of say and look for things that are of interest to you. There's no requirement that you work on the high priority stories for the client. I mean, that's a bigger picture. I think the key thing is to kind of follow your interest. But you can also come to me and say, well, I'm not so interested in this, non-profits for London. What about that Syrian refugee or orphan thing you were talking about? Or what about, I want something that's, I'm not available during the day. I'd rather work in the evenings, And so I can point you towards another project and the Hangouts and the stand-up times and the Slack channels that you would need to go there. If you're, of course. Yeah, to the extent that you're comfortable with me and doing starting off a little thing with me, you could come in, get set up with local support, do a single story, and then never do it again. There's no, the only commitment is that as much as you want to be involved, it's all about just supporting your learning process. What I would say is that probably before. Kind of like committing yourself to saying, oh, okay, I'd like to work on this story, or even sort of chatting about the story. I would say the prerequisite for any project, and this is certainly true for local support, I think it's true for other ones, is just trying to get that project set up on your machine locally. So I think that was the first thing you did, Zivko, wasn't it, when we started? Yeah. So and of course, in the ideal world, all the projects, the setup is straightforward. You just slap it on there, it all works. The reality with the given laptop or what have you may be slightly different, particularly as the project is more complex. It can be, a thing set up. Often where people kind of get stuck is they might try getting set up with a project and doesn't work, and then they just give up and they just say, oh, no. I would say that consider the actual process of getting set up with a project is actually, it's the first chore. It's not like, if you approach it and say, right, I want to work on this chore, and that's a great thing, I want to do that. Right, I want to get set up with the project, and it doesn't work. And you're like, because you've got to turn that getting set up into the first task. That is the first chore. That's the first kind of hurdle, if that makes sense. And it's also something you can pair on setting up a project. For you guys, if you wanted to reach out to Jana or Zivko or one of the other people who are doing it, or even I'd be happy to pair with you myself to take you through the setup process. I don't know, people often think, oh, right, I must go off separately and suffer by myself, banging my head against this computer trying to, install the software. But it's like, I think that's just a valid thing to pair on as, developing a feature for the client, if that makes sense. So I will, and of course, as you know, I just talk endlessly and if I'm just going on, the thing to do is just like throw things at me. Obviously, it doesn't work in there. But, I hope that answers your question, Sam. Anything from Rob or Amy?
I had the same question as Sam. So that's great. I'll try and have a go at setting up now. Check it out. The other thing I was going to ask though is if I know of a couple of other social enterprises that are local to me that might be interested in agile ventures, are you open to? I don't know, what's the process, I guess?
Absolutely. We do have kind of like a sign-up form. But you can, I'm as well as being the project manager for local support, I'm kind of co-founder of Agile Ventures in general. So you can get those people in touch with me via email if you want. We do have a form. If we go to, let's share the screen again. If we just go to the Agile Ventures site, on the About page, there's something actually on that main site I'd like to turn into like a much slicker process. But we have just a quick Google sign-up form where you can people can express their interest and this is partly because when we're doing this with charities and social enterprises, we're not providing any guarantee that we're going to deliver them like a piece of software that will magically make all their problems go away. What we're really providing is kind of like a consulting process where we can potentially prototype a solution for that organization, which is a way of exploring the nature of their needs. and so on. So I think it's kind of important to try and put that up front. We don't want people coming in expecting that they're just going to get a solution to their things. Although we do have projects where people are very happy with what the the system that's been developed. There's no guarantee that works out. But yes, as I say, so that either that form or just put them in touch with me and we'll chat and sort it out.
Sounds good. Okay.
Great. Yeah, Amy, any questions or thoughts?
Perhaps it's just hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me. Oh.
Yes.
Actually, I'd love to be involved, but I think I'll be traveling. I have different travel plans, so perhaps it's something that I get in touch, and I just wanted to be able to contribute as much as I can, but according to the needs of what will work out. So.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. And I mean, exactly like with Mo. I mean, yes. I mean, you guys have had a really tough few with doing the Makers thing. You take the time you need. Agile Ventures is always open. Whenever you want to get in touch or want to get involved, just let us know. Hopefully, you kind of got a flavour for how it works by seeing what we did today. Yeah, I guess the last thing that's just on my mind is I know Sam's in there. I just want to if Amy's maybe not so worried if she's going to have a trip. I'll just mention that we have the Agile Ventures. We've got the Agile Ventures Slack. The other thing to do in terms of projects is just to come and hang out in the hang out in the what are they called? Hang out in the Slack channels for the individual project. So you can see here, this is the local support Slack channel. We have this set up here. There's a little bug. I'll delete that message. So we have this framework, so you can see this was the session that Sam Overloop jumped in on. Earlier on, I was doing a bit of work on local support, and we kind of have it set up so that when people are doing work on things, it puts a link to the Hangout into the channel, and you can it's integrated with Pivotal Tracker and GitHub, and you can kind of get a flavor for what's happening in a project by hanging out in the Slack channel. And there's lots of friendly people, and you can ask questions. It's all good. Or if you just want to lurk, that's the term, isn't it? And see what's going on. So I think. Basically, if you're having trouble getting into this Slack system, just let me know and I can help you out. The way it should work, when the prevailing weather is good, is just when you sign up to Agile Ventures, it should automatically send you a Slack invite, and then if you accept that Slack invite, you'll be added to the general channel and some other basic channels. If there's any trouble with that, just reach out to me individually and I'll get you in there. Yeah. Well, I think that's everything covered, unless there are any other questions.
No, not from me.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Well, I think that's it for me for today. I look forward to seeing you at whatever point in the future where you have a fancy. Yeah?
Yep.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye for now. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.